Thank you so much, Surabhi, for taking out the time and
Yes.
having this chat. And good evening. Today we have Surabhi from Luchi and Muttons, and she's our second guest for the talk series Beyond the Woof. So, Surabhi runs Luchi and Muttons, and this is a holistic canine care practice inspired by her rescue dogs. She is a Bhart's graduate under Sindhoor Pangal, and she also holds a canine nutrition and health diploma from the British College of Canine Studies. So, Surabhi work-wise combines nutrition and behavior in her science-based empathetic approach. We love it, specializing in reactive, bitey, and barky-lungey dogs. All right, Surabhi, over to you. So, what are we talking today?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Oh, yeah. So first things first, thank you so much for having me. I think this is such a cool initiative. I think in general, I think everyone's so busy like doing their own thing that it's really hard, like for even professionals to like connect with each other and catch up. So I
Yeah.
feel like this is such a lovely way to do that. So thank you so much for putting this together.
One can always learn from different
But
approaches. I
today,
mean, yeah.
absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
So today, I think we're broadly going to be chatting about attachment styles and the relevance of that when we think about like the dog-human relationship, especially when we add the lens of dog parenting. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about nervous
Or
system healing for reactive and complex dogs.
yes.
And so, yeah, that's
Yes,
that's essentially what
let's
we'll
get
deep dive
started
into.
with the attachment styles. So, I hear there
Yeah.
are there are different kinds of attachment styles, and let's get
Hmm.
started. The stage is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think I want to start a little by just setting context, right, for the attachment styles. So attachment styles really sort of came in when human child parent and child relationships were being studied and sort of looked at. And the idea really was to try and understand how children form attachments, not just with parents, but also with other people in their lives, right? And so the whole idea of attachment styles really came from this person called John Bowlby. And so he discovered the idea of attachment styles. And there are broadly four attachment styles. You have securely attached, you have anxious attachment, you have anxious avoidant, and then you have ambivalent attachment style as well. And these are all really based on essentially how a primary caregiver and a child interact with each other, right? And so again, what we have found is that the parallels to the dog and human relationship as well. And so in most cases, what happens is when a dog feels securely attached to a human, the dog will leverage the human as a secure base to explore the world, to be curious, to engage in play behaviors, right? And the reason why the emphasis or the observable behaviors are really about curiosity and play behaviors are because the assumption is that that's when the dog feels emotionally and psychologically and physically safe, right? So it's very interesting how play really emerges when the body is physiologically, emotionally safe, right? And so that's really the parallel to the dog human relationship. um, yeah, I'm just going to pause there. Any questions that you have, any thoughts, any comments?
So this goes for everybody. I mean, in case you have thoughts, I mean, you can just unmute yourself or take turns
Yeah,
here, or if you want to write something, chat if you're shy that way,
yeah,
so please feel free to engage. This is a discussion. Ask questions, and that is why we
yeah,
have Surabhi here. So I love the fact that you mentioned that this is an interaction where the dog basically the uh, caregiver acts as a base, and all
yeah,
the kind of interactions change when the dog physiologically, physically, mentally, emotionally feels safe. So I mean,
yeah,
great something to begin with. I mean,
yeah,
yes. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think it's interesting, right? Because of late, I have seen like attachment styles become like really popular language, even
Yeah.
in dog behavior circles. Um, but I think there is some nuance to it, right? And so I think that something for us to remember, like when we walk into a relationship with our dogs, is that we as individuals already have some kind of an attachment style that we're bringing into this relationship, right? So some of us might have had secure attachment experiences, and that's how we view the world. Some of us might have different attachment styles. So we're anyway coming in with our own baggage, right? And the way that we see
Yes,
the world, the way that we see relationships.
yes, yes, yes.
Um, with a lot of dogs as well, and I refer primarily to like adult dogs. And again, in the situation where we're adopting or we're bringing home a dog, they also come with their own baggage, right? And I see that with even puppies, right? So, for example, if puppies have been separated very early on from their mother, from their litter mates, or if they've been in situations where the mother has not necessarily fed them or has been actively responsive to what their needs are, even puppies can come in with baggage as early on as that, right? And so both of us are coming in with baggage in our own attachment styles. And so I think this then becomes a really interesting opportunity for us to reflect on what does it mean for me to feel emotionally and physically safe in general,
Yeah, yeah.
but then what does it also mean for me to facilitate that for my dog, right? And so I think what happens is like secure attachment, because that's the ideal situation,
Hmm.
is really celebrated. It's really glamorized. It's like everybody must be securely attached.
Yeah,
But that in itself is like a process and it's a journey, you
yes,
know? And
yes,
I think in that journey, it's not just about what you need to do for your dog, but it's also about like what you need to do for your own self,
yeah,
right? And so
yeah.
I think that nuance I feel like gets lost when we talk about attachment styles.
I agree.
um and then yeah, I'm just going to pause there because I saw you like nodding quite vociferously.
I
Yeah,
mean, I think as you're just talking, I think I'm just going back, connecting with certain people and their dogs, also mine, things we've seen over the years, and the texts you received from people that, okay, I mean, now I'm having a change within myself. I'm getting more aware. Uh, so many things, so many things. So anybody here, I mean,
yeah,
our participants here, uh, Ragini says, I tell my clients that you can't pour out of an empty cup. Absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
that's a brilliant analogy that often is only focused on the dog, that enrichment, decompression, etc.,
yeah,
etc. But what about this end of the leash? So,
yeah,
great, great. Yes. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I really like what Ragini shared because I feel like that makes just so much sense, right? To like factor in both the human and the dog in this equation. But I think the other thing to also add to that is that that journey of like also filling your cup up or feeling like you're satisfied and nurtured and nourished is also a journey for yourself,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So
Sometimes it
again, I
empties the cup
find
as
that
well.
yeah, exactly, right? And
And
it comes with
accepting
lots
this
of different things.
is very important. Accepting this is very important.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And so, like, I'll have a lot of dog parents like share with me, oh, I have separation anxiety from my dog, right? And I think that's a very real situation. And
Yeah,
I feel like, I think a lot of the times when like conversations or dialogues focus on like just get over it, it's not as simple as getting over it because there are genuine, like, attachment, there is an attachment story to that,
yeah,
right? That we're carrying.
yeah.
And so, how do we like acknowledge it? How do we not feel like, shameful about it? How do we not judge it, but just recognize that there is an attachment story here that requires care and love and acknowledgement first, and then everything else can, move alongside as well, right?
True, true, true,
Um,
true.
yeah,
I agree. So, I mean, absolutely. There's a lot of the self, I mean, there are certain meanings attached. There are
yeah,
assumptions made for, so I I have separation anxiety from my dog. So there are definitely, I mean, there are a lot of different meanings associated to that. Oh, you're always like over pampering, spoiling, etc., etc. And I mean, yes, I get the fact that just acknowledging and
Mhm.
the thing that if somebody is sharing that, so I agree, I
Yeah,
get it. So Ragini
yeah.
here says it's win-win when as trainers we emphasize on both human and dogs' mental health. So I agree. I mean, it can be. So coming back to this, okay, I won't stop you because it's just 40 minutes and I want you to speak. Sorry.
No, no, go for it. I'm curious to say what you have to say. Yeah,
Like
yeah, go for it.
I'll always I'll pitch in. I'll pitch in. Yes, I'm here to listen to you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, no. So I think what I definitely wanted to share was that nuance, right?
Yeah.
Just saying that, it is also about your attachment style, it is also about the dog's attachment style.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think, just building off of actually what Ragini shared is that while yes, we want to move towards secure attachment, I think to just acknowledge that um, you could put in whatever you need to do. And so again, right, there's no formula to secure attachment, right? There's no checklist to say, Acha, you do these 5 things and you will be securely attached, right? It doesn't work like that because
Absolutely. It's very
ultimately,
individualistic. Very
it's
individualistic.
very, very individualistic.
And depends on
And to recognize,
contextual also.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And to recognize that each of us are also carrying sentience in very different ways,
Yeah.
right? So these are not like band-aid solutions. If I have had trouble trusting humans around me for a dog, you can't just slap a band-aid and be like, Acha, no, I am now your reference for everything. It doesn't work like that, right? Like it takes that journey. That's why it's called a healing journey. It
Yeah.
takes time.
Yeah.
And it's not linear. It's
Yeah.
not like step one will, input will lead to output. Like that's not how it works, right? And so I think to also recognize that everybody, like you have to continue to do the work. There is no substitute for the work, right? And I say, and I call it the work with like T capital and W capital as well, right? There is the work that you have to do,
Yes.
but I think to do the work also in a way where you can suspend expectation of like quick results, right? And really focus on like
The
small
journey.
wins.
I mean, what's happened
Absolutely.
along all
Absolutely.
along? Be
Absolutely.
consistent. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Being consistent, like showing up, doing the work, doing the difficult stuff, right? Like some of this journey is not easy. And for those of us, and I particularly put it in context to like those of us who live with reactive or complex dogs, like it's not easy, right? Like there is a lot of like, disappointment, frustration, guilt, resentment. There are uncomfortable feelings to sort of come to terms with, but that is the work, right? And so I think that if we are able to focus on that and suspend this need for like, oh, let's, do this for 3 days and tadak, you'll see like a different dog.
Yeah.
If we can just suspend that and just like, I think, show up as authentically as possible, I think we can start to see change. But again, exactly to what you said, I think keeping in mind that every journey is individualistic, every journey is very context dependent. Um, as human beings, we are also very resistant to change, right? If you come and say something new to us, it's not like we're going to embrace it with all glory. We're going to resist it. We're going to chew on it. We're going to simmer in it. It's going to take time for us to translate that into action. So also like how do we like hold grace for ourselves during that process becomes really important. And so I think, it's great to, I think for more, for as many dog parents as possible to, I think, work with professionals who also understand the human side of this,
Yeah.
right? And who are aware of some of these things, because then that leads to empathy, right? That leads to compassion, that eliminates, any room for like shame or guilt or judging the person, but to just say, hey, let's take a step back, right? What are boundaries that we need to draw in different ways, and how can we help you show up for yourself and acknowledge what's going on in a little bit of this. So I think that's the other thing that I think a lot about, like when it comes to building secure attachment. Yeah.
True. All right. So, how would you say that? attachment styles, different attachment styles, and when working with your own dog. So how do you think the kind of attachment styles, I mean, how does it affect? And mhm.
Yeah. Like,
Especially
okay,
with
so I'll think
challenging
about like,
behavior dogs. So for
yeah,
example,
yeah,
yeah, how does it?
yeah. So I'll take my example, right? Because it's the easiest one to talk about. So I think that like when I think about Mutton, and because Mutton was my reactive dog, right? And this whole journey of dog behavior really started because of her. I think she was definitely like anxiously attached. And I was also a very like anxiously attached person.
Okay.
And
So
so in my
how would you
case,
say
what that
anxiously
led to
attached?
was,
State an example,
I
maybe.
think that, yeah, so I think like a lot of like, will I be okay if they're not around? Will they be okay if I'm not around? Am I feeling like abandoned in this moment when they're not choosing me?
Oh, yeah,
Are they feeling abandoned when,
yeah, yeah.
I'm not choosing them?
All right.
Like a lot of that like talk, right? And so
Got
I think that what that honestly led to, in my case particularly, and this may not be true for everyone else, I think it led to like a really weird space of like codependence, where I don't think I had an identity outside of who I was with my dogs,
got it. Got it.
right? And so, like, it almost became like a situation where like my needs didn't really matter because I was like, who cares about my needs? Like, all I care about is like
My dog.
meeting my dog's needs. And if I meet my dog's needs, then everything is fine.
All right.
Exactly, right? So
I mean,
I think like for me, like, that that was like really like intense, and I think it's been a journey, and I have had to put in the work to step away from that, right, and to find this balance of how can I assert my needs and also think about the other, but while thinking about the other, how do I not compromise what I also need,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so like it's interesting that you ask for that example because for me, like securely attached is, I think again, this is something that a lot of people get wrong, which is a lot of the times when they think about secure attachment, they think that people in a securely attached relationship do not experience any distress or discomfort, right?
It is always
That is
fun.
absolutely not true.
Yeah, yeah. How do you
So
navigate?
absolutely,
Yeah,
right? So distress, discomfort is always going to be part of any relationship. It's part of like any sentient being's life. The question really comes down to is how do you cope with it? And how much of it can you tolerate it?
true.
Right. And so the biggest example that I see honestly is in separation anxiety cases, right? Where your dog has separation anxiety. And I'm like, right now, your dog is unable to cope with this distress
Yes.
of not being around you or of you not being around them.
Yeah, yeah.
This distress or discomfort may never go. They may always feel uncomfortable with you not being around, but
Mm,
over a period of time, we can help them just cope with it differently
yeah,
so that it doesn't feel like the world is going to come crashing down.
true.
Right. And I think
True.
that's a shift to make. So again, like I think somewhere where I get really like a pet peeve. I don't know, I think it's a little bit more than a pet peeve. Is when, like because this industry is so unregulated and because
Yeah,
everybody is like finding ways to like sell like a marketing tagline or
yeah,
a
yeah,
marketing piece,
yeah.
like how there are like marketing professionals who will often say like curb your dog out of
Few
anxiety,
days.
right? Like cure anxiety
Yes.
out of your dog, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, bhai, if you're saying that, you have never lived with anxiety to begin with, right? You don't even know the A of anxiety,
Absolutely.
right? And
Absolutely.
so for those of us who have experienced anxiety, like we will know that it's not something you get over. It is very much a part of your life, but you just find different ways to cope with it.
True.
Right. And I think like how do we extend that to like even dogs
Yeah, yeah,
can I think be helpful. And then of course, I think what makes a huge difference is to have that secure base, right? To have a primary caregiver
yeah.
who can be with you in that distress, right? It's not always about taking that distress away. It's also about just like, can you witness my distress?
Yes.
Can that foster empathy? Can I safely witness this with you, right? And
Yeah.
so I think to me that is the larger piece around secure attachment as well.
Nice. I mean, all this while, I mean, while you took the example of separation anxiety, my dog Candy has separation anxiety, and after Russell passed away, the other dog passed away, it worsened. And we've changed cities, we've changed houses, and there was this one time while we were in Bangalore, and I saw on the camera that we were doing better. We were not Candy was not like following me around while I'm putting up things, getting ready, about to leave. She stopped following me, but then she's silently just sitting on the sofa watching me, whatever. So one day on the camera, I see while I'm away, while I'm out of the house, she gets up on the dining table, she climbs up on the kitchen's counter, she steals some food, and I'm like, oh my God.
Mm,
I mean, this is so
mm,
good. This is so good. So, I mean, I
mm,
was just going back to
mm,
the thought that
mm.
you'll have to consist. I'm sure you won't be able to uh, place your finger on something that, okay, I did this, that is why our relationship changed, right? You can't
Yeah.
place your finger on that. But I mean, great to know. I mean, so let's talk about some actionables for our participants here. That
Mm,
maybe, I
mm,
mean, if there
mm,
are two changes that you'd like, I mean, how to respond, or how
mm,
to respond in a situation or
mm,
something, what can a pet
mm,
parent
mm,
do if they,
mm.
I mean, you get it, you get it. So, okay. So, what are two
Yeah.
changes, for
Yeah.
example, a
Yeah.
pet parent can do
Yeah.
to make their journey
Mm.
towards a more secure attachment base?
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So I actually have five.
All right, nice. Yes.
I'm gonna share five,
Yeah.
okay? Because I'll tell you honestly, I have tried to codify it as much as possible while leaving room for like interpretation and individuality, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So first thing is, I think the first thing is just like familiarize yourself with what are species relevant behaviors, right? Because I
Yes.
think that when we see our dogs behaving,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, we put them into like good, bad, desirable, undesirable. There is a lot of like human lens.
Yes, yes.
But for us to take a step back and say, oh, wait, but maybe this is how naturally dogs behave.
Yeah,
So, what does that mean then?
yeah.
Right? So I would say first things first is just make that difference out for yourself, like know the difference, right? So if your dog is like chewing on furniture, no, your dog is not being a mischievous dog or a bad dog.
Yeah.
There is a need for that behavior. What is that need, right? So familiarizing yourself with that, and then of course that triggers down to like learning how to meet those needs eventually, right?
Yeah.
The second one is, which I think this has to be done like by every dog parent ever, is learn dog body language.
Oh
It is
God, you get a
so
you get a
important.
dog. This should be your first thing.
Yes,
Yes, yes, absolutely.
absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like dogs are not human beings.
Exactly.
They're a different species. You cannot claim to know what they're saying without knowing what they're saying.
A lot
Right?
of
And
it works
so,
on assumption that, oh, I shouted no. He
exactly,
understands no. He
exactly,
knows no.
exactly, exactly. And I want to leave room for perceptiveness. I want to leave room for intuition. I want to leave room for just the sense, right? Like I see my dog, there's a knowingness, and I can know what the dog is potentially feeling or experiencing. There is that knowingness, and I understand that as part of a relationship.
Yeah.
But is it's that knowingness is so much stronger when you actually know the language, when you actually know the signs, right? And so knowing the signs just strengthens your own reading of your dog,
True, true.
right? So it's not to take away from that intuition, it's not to take away from your perceptiveness, it's to say how do we make this as accurate as possible,
Exactly, exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
um so I think that's the second one. Then the third one is definitely going to be like, you know, reassure your dogs as much as you can. Like all of this, you know, nonsense about when your dog is feeling scared, please ignore.
Yes.
Like, come
You
on, yeah. Like
reinforce
if
the
you are
fear.
feeling scared,
Yeah.
Yeah, like what is going on? Like if you are feeling scared and you come to me and I'm like, Acha, nahi, I am not going to listen to you right now.
Ignore. Yes.
It's just not, yeah, like it's not cool at all, right? So I think that like how do we just listen? How do we learn to reassure them as much as possible? That becomes important. I
True.
see time. I'm going to quickly go into this.
I am so sorry. I
Third
think
thing,
I think we're just going to cover attachment and come back again on the
yeah,
safety protocol
I
for,
think so. I think so.
or I
Yeah,
should
I
buy,
think so.
purchase Zoom. Sorry, continue.
No, I think we'll do two parts to this. Um, I think the fourth one is going to be like give your dog choices, right? And to me, the most important choice that you can give them is the choice to just walk away from something
Yes.
instead of like constantly forcing them to engage with something or interact with something. I think just knowing that for our dogs to know that they have autonomy
Yeah.
goes a really, really long way in just feeling emotionally and psychologically safe. And
I,
so I think that's one thing I would do. And then the last one that I would recommend is listen to your dog's feedback as well. Right. And so, for example, something that I encourage all of my clients to do is to tell me if they are doing sniffing a certain way, is it helping their dogs or not? They should have the freedom to come and tell me, listen, something about this is not working out for my dog.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then let's unpack what is working for your dog.
Yeah.
Right. But instead of like taking principles and then being dogmatic about it,
Mm.
listen to what your dog is telling you because that will also help you build that relationship with them.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
I would say those are like my five
But then
key
these
points.
are great tips actually. And yeah, I mean simple to follow, but not easy, I would say.
Hmm.
Simple to
Hmm.
follow, but they're not
That's a
easy.
great distinction. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But then
Yeah.
coming back to the fifth one, taking your dog's feedback, it's very important for a pet
Hmm.
parent to know what to look for. Because when you don't know what you're looking
Absolutely.
for, you're like,
Absolutely.
right, right.
Absolutely.
Hmm,
Absolutely. Which
great.
is why the first 2 points become really important,
Exactly. Exactly.
right? Like if you will not know what to look for if you don't know what to look for, essentially that, right?
Bilkul,
So
bilkul.
yeah.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I'm like panicking. What to do? So, okay, okay.
Deep breath.
I'm
So
going to
yeah.
I'm going to ask you to come back and talk about your safety protocol for your reactivity approach,
Yes.
uh, in a
Done.
different theme. But then let's continue on
Yes.
the attachment
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Participants here, do you have
Awesome.
questions?
Okay. Do people want to like share thoughts or ask questions or something like that?
Yeah, or anything that you've realized,
Experience.
acknowledged,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
in your own dog journey, I mean, in your own dog parenting journey, if there's something that you've recognized you want to share, uh, please feel free to ask here. So, um, I mean, so what was your changing point in your dog's journey? I mean, in your raising journey, that you're
Hmm.
like, okay, this approach is not working.
Hmm.
What do I do?
Yeah, so for me, it honestly came down to when we adopted Mutton. She was my second dog.
Yeah.
And she was quite a reactive, pit bull type dog.
Hmm.
And so basically, what I found was that, so two things that I found. One is most training methods boxed her in as a pit bull and so said, oh, she's a pit bull, she needs certain kind of training that is very breed specific,
Yeah.
which I sort of didn't necessarily engage with.
Hmm.
And then the other kind of training didn't seem to take into account her emotional state, seemed to see her as a very like almost like a reward stimulus kind of relationship, like where it didn't sort of make sense to me. And so I think like for me, I had to discover how to make her feel safe, which none of the training approaches were talking to me about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's where my journey with Bhaks really started, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I think the other thing that I want to highlight, because again, a lot of this gets misconstrued, like Bhaks did not give me a framework to deal with reactivity, right? Like Bhaks gave me a perspective, which
Open
I
your
then had
mind
to
to
exactly, absolutely. which I then had to like individualize and contextualize to my dog
Yes.
and say, this is what works for my dog
Yes.
on these principles, right?
Yes.
And so I think that was a big turning point. It's really hard to build connection with a dog who just feels unsafe around you.
Absolutely.
And I have just now, I just say this, it's a hill I'm going to die on, which is forget any, like, you cannot do anything with someone if they feel unsafe around you.
True.
Forget learning, forget conversation, forget meaningfulness, forget impact, forget all of that. First and foremost, your
You
dog
have
needs
to
to feel
feel
safe
safe.
around
Absolutely. Anybody. I mean,
you. It's key.
yes. I mean, anybody has safety is actually, I mean, the first uh, foremost thing. I mean,
Yeah,
survival, of course, right? Everybody functions
absolutely,
for that.
absolutely,
Everybody functions for that.
absolutely.
So, true, true, true. I agree.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and what has been like the biggest, I mean, I'm sure you've shared five of these that these principles, I'm going to pin them. I'm like
yeah.
going to note them down and share them. And this is tell people that this is something that you've missed. So yes, and I think okay, we have just 4 minutes left here. So
Yeah.
let's talk about where can everybody, I mean, I know that you have a podcast, so I think you should be talking about where can, I mean, how does anybody reach out to you? You have website, social media, podcast, what are
Yes.
they? Yeah.
Yes. So the easiest is going to be Instagram,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
because that's also where I doom scroll so much. So that's the easiest place to reach out to me. So people
Lovely
can.
content, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, people can reach out to me at Luchi and Muttons on Instagram. And then I have the website, which is luchiandmuttons.com.
Yes.
And then if you're really interested in listening to me ramble, you can find me on Spotify. It's called the Luchi and Muttons podcast.
Yes.
But everything, basically just put Luchi and Muttons and something or the other should find show up for you. That'll point you towards me.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
sure there are a lot of different talks that you've had with different speakers on YouTube as well. I mean,
Mhm.
I've heard them. I've uh,
Mhm.
listened
Yeah.
to your
Yeah.
journey with your dogs, and beautiful. I mean, really good. And I'm sure that there's a
Yeah.
lot to take away from those conversations. The kind of transformations you see when you start seeing
Mm.
the individual in front of you, and not going by the blanket advice that everybody seems to have. Right. So, yes. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
anybody else? So, Anchal here has, she speaks in the chat. Today itself, I started listening to Surabhi's webinar related to reactive dogs. It is a delight to understand behaviors in detail, I'm sure. And the kind of language
Yeah.
she speaks is something that I'm like, "Mm, I can listen to you like nonstop. Please keep talking."
Oh, I love
Okay,
it.
so
I love
that,
it. Yeah, I think it's I don't want to share that, right? I think it's also a journey because I feel like for so many of us
yeah.
who've been doing this work for some time or do it in the kind of depth that we do,
Hmm.
I think it's hard to just keep talking about here's how you can fix a barking issue with your
Yes,
dog.
yes, yes,
You
yes.
know, like there is just so much more like depth and nuance to the work that we have that I just feel like, so for me, by the way, I have to tell you this 2025 is all about like talking beyond problem behavior. I'm just like, I cannot do it anymore. Like, I am telling you that you can solve the problem behavior, but there is so much more than you can access. So, can you just please start listening to that piece as well?
Exactly, exactly. And when
Um,
you fix that, all of that,
yeah,
like all of that follows,
exactly.
right? So
Yeah,
yes, I mean you don't necessarily. So so this is one thing that I keep on saying. What you focus on grows. So instead of just focusing on the problem behaviors, why not focus
yeah,
on something that you can do? Right.
absolutely.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, I loved having you here. I'm sure everybody has like resonates with the thought. And I'm so sorry that we could not give you like the
No, not
chat
at
that we had
all.
planned for, and it's just less
Don't
than
worry.
1 minute. I'm so sorry, but then this was
Not at
great.
all. Yeah, I'm
So
so glad I had a great time, Preeti. This was lovely.
thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for taking out time. And let's absolutely, we need part 2.0. And I'll catch
Yeah.
hold of her. I'll catch hold of her
Yes,
and get back to you soon.
yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. Thank
Same to
you.
you. Same to you. Thank you so much.
All
Take
right.
care. Take care,
Yep.
everybody.
Bye.